Sirens, Slammers, and Service, a podcast for female first responders by female first responders. My name is Nikki Clucci, and I will be your host. As a former correctional officer in Alberta for almost 2 decades and the founder of Blue Line Fitness Testing, which provides law enforcement fitness testing and first responder wellness workshops, I started this podcast as a way for female first responders to share the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of their daily work. I want to showcase the unique perspectives, skill sets, and personalities that women bring to a first responder career and share their stories. So get ready to laugh your ass off, learn a whole bunch, and be inspired by some pretty badass women. Let's go. Welcome back, guys. And I am beyond excited today to introduce you to one of my favorite coworkers, somebody we only worked together for a short 4 years, but it was a fantastic 4 years. It was also a freaking whirlwind 4 years because we were opening a brand new jail. Barb Sexsmith. Barb has 33 years in both federal and provincial corrections, and then she retired, bless her heart. And she is a true pioneer for women in corrections. Barb and I had the honor of working together at head office on our new Edmonton Remand Center project, and then opened up the jail together. And we worked together right up until 2015. So welcome, Barb.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Like I said, I'm legit. I've been excited about this podcast all week. We haven't seen each other in a while, I would say probably 5 years. And I had to spend time catching up with you before we started recording because I miss you. How's retirement treating you? Are you loving it?
I am. It's like, I don't even understand why people, before they retire go, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? It's like just a dream, really, even working though, it's on your own time and you can do what you want and you can say, no, thank you. And I love it.
That's awesome. And you earned it. You earned it. 33 years in corrections. Like I'm inspired. I can't even imagine doing that long. Like I said, I hit 17 and was like, I am out. So, 33 years, amazing. So tell me the story. Tell me of how you got into corrections. Tell me, what drew you to this career? What was your journey throughout your career? 33 years is a long time. I'm sure you have a ton of amazing stories and you have all these different places that you've worked. So let's do it. Tell me.
Well, I kind of fell into it. Like I never really even thought I wanted to do that. And I finished high school and I was working at an oil company and it was this awesome job. And jobs were really, really scarce then. It was the early 80s. And so it was like I had this brilliant job with this awesome boss. And but then I started thinking, well, I should go to school, So I put it was an engineering group that I was with. So I put in to do engineering technology at Saint. And also general studies at Mount Royal. Mount Royal came along with the first letter. So I went, okay, I'm going there. And so I worked while I was going to school, but I thought, also in those days, it was like you could, as a woman, you could be a nurse or you could be a teacher. Yeah. And so I was just taking general studies. I took a couple classes of teaching and I thought, oh, I don't even like this, even though now I'm a teacher. But
you came full circle.
Yeah. But I took a criminology class and it was so fascinating to me. And it was so and I said, that's it. I'm taking criminology and off I went. So
was your criminology, was it like very much like sociology, psychology based style classes similar to what I took?
Yeah, but it was at the time, like it was a diploma program and we had the main guy for it had worked in jails and there was a whole bunch of stuff about case management and, security and, correctional methods, all that kind of stuff. So it was a really good program, I thought.
That's really cool because mine was very much high level. Mine was very much like theoretical, theories of criminality, lots of law, like focused on the job style stuff. It was more so like, like this is the theory of why people act like this, or these are the mitigating factors. So I love that yours was a little bit more practical, a little bit more kind of on the job style. So then you went to school, graduated with a diploma in criminology, and then where did that take you?
Well, and nobody was hiring, but very suddenly the federal corrections started wanting women in penitentiaries. And so they came recruiting to Mount Royal and they took like 3 or 4 of us. And they also, in the penitentiaries, they also didn't have educated people. So when we went in, it was like the very first day, it was like, oh, an educated woman. Like it was like you were totally like a black sheep right as soon as you came in. But and I'd never been in a jail before, and went to like 14 weeks of training at Depot because none of the colleges were open. Like it was a really bad recession that everybody was in. So
when is this? Like what year is this that this is
1984.
happening? 1984. Okay. Yeah. So recession, not a ton of jobs for anybody. And you basically get headhunted by the federal government. We want you, and you're an educated female, come and work with us.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It amazing.
Really was. Yeah. I lucked into everything. I feel like, like it was, luck in that you find a career that you love and is really interesting. And then a whole bunch of steps along the way were luck. Even some of the bad stuff that happened, it was like, it got me where I am right now. So it's like, here,
totally.
It works.
I fully subscribe to that. And again, it's like that cliche of like, one door closes, another one opens. And I always like barf when I hear it, but it really is true. Like sometimes like shitty things happen to you because it's not meant for you. And like, it takes it being so shitty for you to be like, oh, I guess that's not for me, and try and move on, versus like going after that thing repeatedly and it just being shitty and just accepting that it's shitty. So that's fantastic. And okay, so I want to go back. So you said you did your training at Depot. So RCMP Depot in Saskatchewan is where they sent you to do training in 1984.
Right.
Oh my God, so cool.
Yeah, it was one troop, and it was a federal experience because they have like 3 colleges, I think, and none of them were open. And even they weren't training very many at Depot either. There was like 2 troops the whole time I was there. So it was like we did everything that they did, and our corrections people didn't really like that because they basically said, you're doing what we are doing, so and everything was a big surprise to me. It's like I had no plans or anything, and it was like, oh, we're supposed to learn to shoot a gun. Oh, interesting. And I'm supposed to run and swim and do all this self-defense. Oh yeah, I guess I would need that. Like my whole thing was like that. It was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So never been in a jail before, never seen an inmate. So that I knew of.
That is so cool. And then, so how many women were with you when you were going through your training?
So we had a troop of about 20, and it was, I think, maybe 9 or so. And everybody was going off to different pens. So there was, I think 3 of us went to Drumheller when I went, and there was 3 or 4 went to Edmonton Max as the very first women that worked there. Wow. And some to Stony Mountain. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. So interesting time. So
very cool. Very cool. It's interesting you say that. It says Sandra, who is one of our previous episodes, she was saying when she did her Depot class, she's of the RCMP, it was an equal ratio class. So they had 12 males and 12 females, and it was one of the first ones. So I like hearing that there was 9 of you, even back in 1984, 9 females in that class. That's fantastic. And some of the first females heading to Edmonton Max. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. So you graduate from your training, you are all like ready to go, Kung Fu Ninja, you can do it. And you get sent to where?
Drumheller. And I'd never even been there. And even the mayor sent us all letters going how happy he was that we were coming to, work there, like these welcome, total small town. Cool. And then I went there and I thought, oh my God, this is a horrid place to be. Like there was nothing, like no sports, no movie theaters, like nothing. The Legion. And that
the Legion in the jail. The Legion in the jail. That's
it. Yeah.
How new was Drumheller when you were there? Like
it was really old. It had been I think in the early 60s is when it was built.
Okay.
And it was old then, and it's older now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I didn't think it was that old. I was thinking Drum was probably around the same time as the old Reman was built, like in the late 70s. So it's in the 60s. Yeah, it's old now.
Prince Albert Pen is where we did our on-the-job training, and it was old. Like it was so old that when we were there, they were doing renovations, and they were actually uncovering rooms that had been built over, and we're coming up with these like the paddle and all these kind of things that they used in the 50s or something. Like it was so old, they were doing like about the 10th round of renos at it. So it was a cool jail. It's just like in the movies, that place. So
That's so cool. So you did 14 weeks at depot, and then how long for on the job?
So it was in the middle of that we went. I think it was about 2 weeks,
Okay.
and Prince Albert, it probably still is like about 98% sex offenders or people that don't fit into population. So like cops that had killed their wives and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they had one woman working there. And when they were touring us around, they were made a big deal that this woman was wearing purple nail polish, like that wasn't appropriate. And I'm just doing this, hey, note to self, don't wear nail polish, purple nail polish too. And that's what the kind of culture was like at the time. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, and fair, right? And I mean, oh my God, heaven forbid purple nail polish. I also got it. I will tell you though, I got in trouble at remand once because I wore these little butterfly clips in my hair. They were like these little like colorful butterfly clips because I had these stupid bangs and I was trying to grow them out. And so they would like hang down. So then I put them up. And Mr. Samard, who is one of our deputy director of operations, quite a intense man, came to me and he was like, those need to go now. And I was like, but sir, I have really bad bangs. Which is not the thing to say, not the thing to say to him. And he was like, now. I was like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Went to the bathroom, like took the clips out. And then I was like trying to make my hair not look so stupid to have to go on the unit and deal with the inmates. I was like, wicked. So, okay. So you're in drum and did they do any shadow shifts for you? Or is it basically like you're trained, in you go, you're on?
that was exactly it. It was like you're in there, and the administration never came into that actual part of the jail. So it was like then there was like you had a partner, a living unit officer partner. So it was like casework, but also shift work, and you were the only ones on the unit. And so there was four of you, and they one of you or two of you were supposed to be out. If there was only three on, then it would be one of you out patrolling with the other LUs around, like it's kind of campus style setup. So you spend all your time outside or all your time inside, no matter how cold or hot it was there. So I did a lot of I'm going on the outside tours, and there was a couple of older guys that were probably like 10 years younger than I am now, but that were that kind of took me under their wing. So it was like really a really good experience for me to train with those older guys, and none of them were oh my God, this is a woman kind of thing. I'm sure that they were out there. There was lots of them saying that, but these guys were awesome, and they did every time we did anything, it was like they would say, "What would you do if?" Or like everything was training all the time.
I love that. That's
They were.
awesome.
So
That's
you had it in your
awesome.
head for your whole career, like thinking about what you would do if this happened or what you do if that happened. So it's not a big surprise when it happens. So
Yeah, because it will happen. That's exactly
yeah,
it. It will
yeah,
happen. Like what they're saying, like, and I know like lately there's been like, oh, these guys are all these doomsday guys, like as if that's ever gonna happen. And I'm like, it is gonna happen, like, or it has happened, which is why they know what to do when it happens, and they're trying to prep you. Don't roll your eyes at them, and don't think that these dinosaurs are like out to pasture. Like they know what the fuck they're talking about, and they're trying to help you. So listen and learn, because it's not a question of if, it's a question of when that situation is going to pop off. So that's phenomenal. I love that they took you under the wing and kind of helped you out. And so you're at Drumheller, you're like a regular officer. Was there any like special posts that you did there? Anything that you really like, once you got in, you really liked, or was it just kind of like you're just learning the routines and going through the day-to-day stuff?
So it we did the security part of the unit, but also, so you had a caseload, you did all the reports and everything, but you were also responsible for searching all their cells and everything. And meanwhile, there's like the four of you on the unit, and somebody has to be doing a range walk at least every half hour. So, and this was new to the inmates having women there, and I looked like I was like 15, and I probably had this wide-eyed look anyway. And one range, the new guys range, they called it the fish range, would they double bunk them. So it was a bunch of hellions in there, and they were way too many people in there. And so every time I did a range walk, you could hear the whole range going off saying like, get off this range, you fucking bitch and stuff. And you couldn't actually catch who was saying it because they'd be doing it and yelling it in their cell, and you're going and banging and everything. And I'd look at my partners and you could see them going, oh my God, she's going to die. She's going to die out here. And, you know, and so I said, okay, I'm doing every range walk. Every time I'm doing it until they finally quit. They didn't quit until I actually caught one and charged them. And then that was the end of it. But it was like weeks or maybe even months of that. So
I love that though. But I love that about you, because how many other people would be like, okay, well, the easy way is for me not to do these. Like, obviously there's 3 other partners here that can do the range walks. So you guys do them because I'm sick of being called a fucking bitch. Like, or I'm sick and tired of like being worried every time I go out there. I love the fact that you were just like, listen, motherfuckers, I'm here to stay, and you better get used to it because I'm coming out every half hour and I'll find one of you. Right. And like, I was going to say to our listeners that don't work in a jail, those inmates that yell and kick and bang from their cells, we call them window warriors, because basically they will yell and kick and bang and be total dickheads when the door is closed. And then the second the door opens, they're like, yes, ma'am. What can we help you with? Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, and the doors were open. Like there would be like 40 guys in that one little hallway, and they obviously would know just by the sound of things when I was coming and going, so they could yell from their cell, or after I passed them, they'd be the yeller or whatever, so it was like, I have to win. I have no choice.
Yes. I love it. Totally though. I mean, that's it. That's the perseverance it takes, right, to do this job.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so did you stay at Drum for your whole entire federal career, or did you go around to different other institutions?
No, and my whole entire federal career was 1 year or 18 months.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And we had comparing the federal and the provincial system, we had no control. We were always in the wrong, like if an inmate told on us for something, then they took the inmate side and they had all these privileges. My partner was teaching me how to do my first range search. So all of my guys in this whole range. And so they aren't in there, and we've got a barrier across that nothing really ever happens. Prior to me, really would happen while you were searching. So they'd let inmates go down there and stuff. And so my partner's saying to me, well, take anything you want, you believe is contraband, you take it out. And it was like, I had like a hallway full of stuff. It was like little tables they made in the shop class, and macrame hangers, and all this stuff. Like it was, and they kind of let them just do it, but I didn't know that, or I thought, well, this is contraband, period. So they let this guy down. This was the kind of a crazy, I remember this guy's name vividly, but I can't say it. So we're down there in the range, and they let this guy go down thinking, no problem. And so he goes and checks in his cell and sees I took his little table. And so he's comes out and he starts saying, he goes, you took my little table? And I said, yeah, it's contraband. And so he starts coming out and throwing, like he'd go in, grab something and throw it at us down the range. And my partner's got his little table up, like he's barricading behind this little table like a or something. And I keep running into the first cell and buzzing it so that they would look and see that we're down there. We didn't have radios or anything. And so they would keep clicking that one cell as though somebody's trying to get out of it. And you're going, no, for God's sake, we're dying down here. So
yeah.
But we got out, and then when they were, restrained him and everything, and was brought out, and he's walking by me and he goes, are you satisfied? And I went, no. When they would always say, my partners, they would say, what would you do if? But the answer would always be, you'd do the real thing. And then the answer would always be, or you can hope you don't slip in your own shit on the way out the door.
I mean, there's also that. Yeah.
Totally. A run is the other thing.
Yeah, right. That's crazy. So then you're at drum for 18 months. What was the catalyst for moving over to provincial? Was it a different opportunity? Were you just kind of like, maybe federal's not my jam. These guys can do whatever the fuck they want.
It kind of was that way, but I didn't really understand what it could be until I ended up in provincial. But it was more about living in Drumheller, and I never spent any days off there. And I my whole life I've done a lot of sports, and there was nothing. So I actually went to be a rural probation officer in Olds right after that. And then about 2 years into that, I moved to Calgary to work at the Young Offender Center.
Okay.
So, and then I ended up at remand and back at the Young Offender. And then,
so when you went to rural probation, that was your first move into provincial corrections of some sort. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I speak? No, rural probation officer in Olds, learning kind of the casework side of it, the paperwork side of it, the post-release. Here's what we do with these inmates. Here's how we have to monitor them. And then the move to Calgary because just better quality of life, I'm assuming, probably in Calgary than it is in Olds. There isn't much in Olds to do than there is in Drumheller.
No,
so.
there really wasn't. And it was a great job, but I really hated my boss. And I've always said that my whole career, I can do any job anywhere, but if I hate my partner or hate my boss, then that's it. So I really, really didn't like him. And so, and you did everything as a rural probation officer, like you did, there was no special caseloads. You did parolees and adults and youth and talked to classes, and you did fine option, and, you did everything. So it was a pretty good experience, but
knowledge base huge, but workload probably very, very high as well.
Yeah. And it was, because it's rural, there was so much, like you'd be winding up on somebody's, farm, and you are amazed that you even got there because they're saying turn at the red barn and all this kind of crap.
And there's no Google Maps.
Yes. And there's no one, you don't have a cell phone. So it's not like, and people don't even know you're out there. Like they never kept track of you or anything. So it was like, I could die out here and nobody would know.
They're not going to find my body. It's in a farmer's field somewhere. Okay. So you go to Calgary, you're in Young Offenders Correction. How long were you in Young Offenders before you ended up at Calgary Remand?
I worked there for 2 years, and they were prior to Calgary Young Offender Center, they were in a building that is now the Southern Alberta Forensic. And so when they built the Young Offender Center, most of the people went with them, and then they turned that building into a minimum security adult facility. And so I actually worked there. And that was wild, 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 because there's like two of you on shift that aren't the manager and aren't the guy at control. And the inmates are all going out during the day and programs or work or something, and they're coming back with tons of drugs and alcohol and drunk and high, and it was kind of a crazy job, but I truly loved it. So
holy man, I can't even imagine. And so then you're supposed to deal with them when they've come back like this, like just you're on afternoon shift, deal with that, lucky you. Holy man,
it was fun though. So
right. And like, because the thing is like, you think about those things, you're like, it was insane. And you're like, but also some of the best stories of my life.
Yeah, really.
Some of the funniest things I've ever seen. Some of like the most random things that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
I love it. So then you go to Calgary Remand, which is basically the second biggest jail in Alberta. Busy, busy, busy. Again, same as Edmonton was, I'm assuming at this time, overcrowded, built for a certain capacity, double bunking / probably triple bunking. What was your role there?
So it was probably the funnest part of my whole career, which was 12 years working as the mental health caseworker. I actually took a demotion to go do that job. And it was the best thing I ever did. It was just so much fun, and it was just, I learned so much, working with people that were mentally ill, and a lot of them that really did not belong there. It was just like what society does to manage them. Mm-hmm. And it was probably our psychiatrist, or one of the psychiatrists used to say that it's pretty much the only place where you can see untreated mental illness, because if they're in the hospital, they're being treated. And if they aren't, then they're out hiding under bridges and stuff like that. So it was a cool experience.
Well, and like for those that people that don't know, in jail, we can't force medicate people. So if they refuse to take their medication, they refuse to take their medication. And so they'll come in very, very sick. And so they'll take their medication when they're that sick because they realize, I think, that they're that sick. They know that they're out of control. But then they take their meds and then they start to feel better. And then they start to get that sense of, oh, I don't need these medications. Clearly I'm better. And so then they'll start to self-wean themselves. Like for me, it was always dealing with, the guy that had stopped taking one and then he'd stop taking the second one and then he'd stop taking the third one. And then by the time he stopped taking the fourth one, he's spiraled right back down into complete psychosis. And then we're dealing with him and going, you've got to go. Like you're coding out or there's issues or we need to like get you to the hospital so they can force medicate you so we can restart this whole cycle again. Right. So I'm sure, yeah, exactly. The only place you can see untreated mental illness for sure, and all spectrums of mental illness, like when you look at that DSM, I don't know, I think it's DSM-5 now, maybe it's 6, there might be a new
It's 5, I
variation.
think, yeah.
Yeah, like literally all of those things are in jail. Like you can see every single one of them. They should do like a psychology class in jail and see them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So give me some stories. Hit me with some of your favorite things, because if this is the most favorite part of your job, there's got to be, and 12 years, like 12 years doing the same role is an amazing feat in and of itself. Because a lot of people, I think, like when we've talked about this in previous episodes, the ebb and flow of the 7 years of, like now I've done this, now I'm bored or I'm bitter or I don't like it. And so I'm going to look for a new opportunity or I'm going to leave the career, right? So you've kind of ebbed and flowed through provincial and federal, and now you've hit your kind of home base where you love. So what do you got? There's got to be something amazing. That's the couple amazing stories here.
Well, I've got, like, we had a lot of chronic people, and most of them don't even really think they're mentally ill. Like it's their reality. Like if they think they're Jesus, they think they're Jesus, and just because we don't believe it, then doesn't mean they stop thinking that. They think that we're all conspiring against them to, tell them that they're not, like that it's our problem. And they also didn't like how the medication felt, and so we would get in there. We also had the kind of suicide cells, but a lot of them were just segregation for the kind of the big criminals that came in. And so you'd get to know them pretty well, and all the scary, creepy ones. And
yeah, the ones that make the front page of the Calgary Herald. And yeah.
And all of the and we get in, pardon me, we'd always get in the ones like that you never hear about, and they're like prolific sex offenders. Like they've done, every time they get out, they do stranger sex assaults, break into women's houses. Like I can't even tell you how many of those people are out there doing that never even hit the news.
Yeah.
But and that was interesting. And those ones usually were kind of the psychopaths, so they weren't fun to work with. And you also kind of felt like, you guys belong here. These poor mentally ill ones don't. Mm-hmm. So, and it was like, I would collect all these requests for interview forms where they'd write stuff, and you could see mental illness. Like I've got stacks of them where, the way their thoughts travel, which is like totally dislodged and totally crazy. So this is probably my favorite story ever. So we also would get into the mental health unit. The guys that didn't work well anywhere else in the center, which was really unfair because everybody wanted to be there, the manipulators, because they would get to use the phone. They were easy to muscle against these poor, either low functioning or brain damaged or whatever people. And so we'd often get people trying to sneak in there, and then, they'd be for a few days, and we go, nope, you don't belong, out you go. But so we had this one that had pretty much been in a fight everywhere in the center, and he was not a very big person, but he was total middle class. Like he was a really, really nasty domestic violence abuser. And so, he thought he was better than everybody else because he didn't have a record or was middle class or whatever. And so he would be in there, but we also held our transgender people in there as well. So the ones that were physically men below the waist, but were taking medication and pretty much live as women on the outside. Yeah. And they fit in really well there, and they loved me because it was like, hey, girlfriend, because most of the staff are male and everything.
Yeah.
So I loved it when they came in, because it would be, and there would be lots too, because, you know, it was a really tough life for them. And it's probably still tough, but, you know, so a lot of them wound up on the street or with alcohol or drug problems. But we would get this one in, this mulatto woman, and I call her a woman because that's how I saw her.
That's what she identified as. Yeah.
Right. And she was a sex worker, and she was really tiny. She was like probably about 85 pounds, and she had these long, beautiful nails, and we were supposed to probably cut them. But you didn't want her going back out there with nothing on the street, you know, like that was really the only way she could survive. Like that was the only weapon. And she was completely harmless in there as well. So we've got this other jackass in there. And of course, who's he going to pick on in the unit but her?
Yeah, the woman. So of course.
Yeah. So and they didn't, like, we didn't always have a staff member in the unit, but there was a control bubble outside the unit so they could see in there, but they couldn't hear anything. So I'm walking down the hallway towards that unit, and I can hear screaming coming from it. And there's this really great big, really low functioning guy, and I can hear him yelling, man down, like this thing. And so I go running down there, and there's blood everywhere. And the transgender one's lying on the ground face down, and the other one's on top of her. And the whole back of her coveralls are covered in blood. And so I fortunately grab her. Other people grab him. And so I take her into the healthcare area, and the nurse and I are trying to take down her coveralls and see where all this blood's coming from and everything. And none of it's hers. And so while we're doing this, and she's all shaking and everything, and I go, so what happened? And she goes, she also kind of had the Spanish accent, and she goes, well, first he called me a cunt, and I just howled. But what she'd done was clawed his face so bad he had to get stitches, like right below his eyes where they kind of hooked onto his cheeks. Like I thought, this could not have happened to a better person. You know, like totally went after what he thought was the most vulnerable person in the world, and lost bad. So
I love that. That is awesome. Like, yeah, you thought you'd be a bully, and you thought you'd pick on this small woman, and she just whooped you. Like, which is probably what needed to happen your entire life, was you needed a good ass whooping from a woman. But hey, no problem. We'll let the transgendered inmate do it for us instead. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Like he's never living that down ever in his entire life.
No, and pure narcissist, this guy, you know. I'm sure he's still suing them. That was probably in the early 90s, and it was probably still suing them. So
probably. Oh my gosh, that is great. That is great. It is. It's like when you think about like even just like the evolution of corrections, of how we used to have all of these different people on the same unit. Like Edmonton was the same on our like our 5th floor. We had a unit of kind of like mental health, transgendered / low functioning, brain damage, like, and we just put them all together, and we were like, okay, guys, like this is where you live. And for the most part, they were good, and they got along, and they were, you know, it was a relatively easy unit to work, because you just had to go out and kind of basically do basic needs, right? Like feed, medicate, and you're good. But every so often, you'd have something go like this and be like, whoa, okay, so let's adjust that placement. So as a caseworker on that unit, so then are you doing like case planning for them? I mean, with remand, we know, you and I know, but for our listeners, there isn't really a ton of release planning or things like that we can do, because they're remanded. We don't have them for a long period of time. We don't know what's going to happen when they go to trial or sentencing and things like that. So as a caseworker, you're working basically, is it similar to like the Young Offender Center, where it's a caseworker and a correctional officer that are on the unit together, and you're basically working as a team to do like some of the daily routine stuff, but also do case planning?
Well, no, because they would assign a CO to the unit, and I would come and go as whatever I needed. And but I would work, so we would have psych rounds twice a week where the psychiatrist would come in and psychologists and us would meet with the inmate. And, so I had all the information of what was going on with them during the week and, if they need more medication or less or whatever the case may be. And but I also did a lot of stuff to hook them up with resources on the outside because they're babies. Some of them are like infants that just have nothing and no ability to access things. So it was, and there really wasn't a lot. There still isn't that much, but it was really hard for them every time they got out to expect them to stay out or somehow survive. So, but I also worked, and I did classification throughout the center as well. So I did the healthcare unit where they would come in. Most of them were withdrawn from drugs and alcohol, as well as the female unit. And there was a lot of, I never actually worked with the women in the minimum security one or in the young offender center. I always had, worked on the men's units. So, and because I could come and go and wasn't sitting there all day long with them and letting them drive me crazy, it was good. Like you could kind of be that sort of person that was a kind of a confidant when they came in. Same with all the other units, because you're not wearing a uniform at that time. And, you're somebody different. Their lives are horrible and they need somebody. So.
Yeah. Well, and we talked about this too. Like, there's a reason we get into these careers. We get into these careers usually out of a desire to help, right? Or out of a desire to make a difference in somebody's life. Majority of us, right? And so, when you see these things, it's hard to not have compassion and empathy for these people, especially when you see the where they were brought up, how they were brought up. Some of them were just abandoned from like day one and basically expected to figure out how to live as a normal citizen in society. But they've never been taught anything and they've never been shown anything. And then they hit that cycle of in jail, out of jail, in jail, out of jail. And the only place where they're finding any regulation is when they're in jail, when there's regular food and programming and medication that they don't have to pay for, right? Because when they get out on the street, they can't afford however many hundreds of dollars a month for their antipsychotic medication. So what's the first thing that goes? Meds. Well, then in 3 days, they're off their meds and they're crazy again and they're hungry because they haven't eaten in 3 days. And so, yes, they're going to commit a crime. So it's totally true. Like to have that ability to kind of do those small things to try and help them. That's where we are driven usually as officers.
Yeah.
So 12 years at Calgary Remand. And then what was the change? Why the move?
Well, the reason I went there to start with was so that I could have a day job so I could get my master's. And it didn't take me 12 years to do it, but I thought it and then went, I don't even know what to do with this now. But eventually I foolishly started thinking, well, I have a master's degree. Maybe I should be a manager. And so I started, the next job I got was as a manager at the Young Offender Center, as a shift manager. And so, and that was a cool job, but I'd already been working there. I worked there for 6 years prior to going to remand. So it was like a very different crowd of different philosophy. The inmates were totally different. The approach was totally different. It was kind of passé to me. Crazy as that sounds, like I wasn't exactly an adrenaline junkie like some people are, but I did thrive on that, being busy and doing all kinds of stuff. And they were different from the young offenders that I knew in the late 80s. So like those ones that they were just kids that sex, drugs, and rock and roll for them. And then by the time I became a manager at the Young Offender Center, it was like this totally different crowd of kids that was like just so damaged and so much mental illness and so many really multi problems, like just a ridiculous amount of problems. And, and you don't want to throw away the key when they're 15 years old, but if they've already done a couple murders or something like that, like you're going like, there's some scary, scary kids out there. And I don't know that anyone still has the tools to somehow turn that around, so.
Well, and that's again, that's why I left group homes, because that's exactly what I could see. I could see these kids I could see the trajectory that they were on. And I was like, it doesn't matter how hard I work with this kid at this stage in their life. And I worked with the kids that were 7 up to the kids that were 18. It doesn't matter what I do because they're so damaged already that unless basically I adopt all of them and then my full-time job is taking care of these kids, they're going to end up in jail. That's where they're going. There really is no other way, because to them, that's the gangster life. That's what they want. They want the freedom. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be, and so, you see that trajectory and you just think to yourself, like, there is no saving these kids, right? Like, I mean, maybe at some stage in their life when they grow up a bit and kind of realize that, like, the gangster life ain't all that, they might be able to, make their way out of it, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So I completely understand that. And so I like how you said I made the foolish decision to move into management, because I also feel that. I truly do, though. I feel like that was, I should have stayed as a frontline officer. Would I still be in corrections to this day if I was a frontline officer? I probably would be, because that's where I thrive. That's where I really like to be, was on the units, dealing with the inmates, right? Like, moving into management and dealing with the administration and the paperwork and the staff and the, like, the politics was the parts of my job that I hated. And yet you move up and then you're like, oh, this is all I'm dealing with. And I don't ever get to go back and deal with the inmates on the unit. That's why I always did my rounds, because that was my break from being stuck in the office, taking phone calls and doing paperwork, was to go out and wander around on the units and talk to the inmates and hear their funny stories. Right. So, So as a shift manager at the Calgary Young Offender Center, and then from there to head office, is that where you went?
No, so I went to Edmonton Remand Center as a DDO, director.
And we did a lot of the training and stuff together and sat in on a lot of the program decisions, right?
I don't know how I knew you before. I felt like I knew you from the old one.
So ERC as a shift manager. So you go back from super slow CYOC. Now you jump into the fire at ERC, which is usually busier than Calgary Remand. You got a little dose of, like, hot tamales, and then we opened a new jail and you were, like, hot seating it as the director of programs.
All of it was exhausting. All of it was just, and the DDO part was also a really good job. I did honestly love that. But you would, like, your 8-hour shift was easily 12 hours every day.
Yeah.
And honestly, I hadn't done nights in a lot of years until I became a manager again, and then it was like, I am way too old for this. Like, this, they just killed me.
Yeah.
But and it was fun. Like, it was like pepper sprayed twice before 9 a.m. sometimes, and like, it was fun, but it was also a lot of the stuff that you and I were both saying we love, working with the inmates, really didn't exist very much. So
it becomes again administrative.
Yeah. And that's me too. I did my rounds just because I love that. So
we get to the new jail. You're the director of programs. You're overseeing now a program of, 18, we had 1,900 capacity inmates, and all of the new programming that we had planned. So at the old Remand, and I'm sure at the same as Calgary Remand, we really didn't have a ton of classroom stuff. So they didn't go to school. It's not like when you see in the movies where they're, they go to school or they go to work in the shop. Some jails do have that, but both the Remands do not. But moving into the new jail, that was one thing that we kind of identified as we needed to give them something to do to productively occupy their time. So you had a big role in essentially building up a lot of the programming for the inmates. Tell me about that.
I did a lot of research. Like, I talked to so many different programs and so many different things that to see if it was doable, because even if it was a great program, you're talking about going into a jail, and a lot of the people that do deliver the program are not, they have to be two really kind of special people, like ones that can teach people that are at, varying levels of functioning and don't even want to be in the building, but also that can get along with the whole culture that goes on in a jail and all the safety stuff. So the Young Offender Center had a school, and Calgary Remand, we actually had a life skills program for the inmates in the ATU, the mental health unit. And I did do quite a bit of programs. Like I developed an anger management program and deliver it. And with the women, I did basically how to, like, sometimes it was basic hygiene that they had no idea about, and really low literacy rate. So kind of fun, but it was also a lot of that job was worrying about the other three big areas, the four of us that were get everything linking together. And it was a really, really, really hard job. Like it was just the pressure, from the public and the government and the staff, and it was just like a really, really hard job to somehow juggle it all. And I honestly never felt like I was doing a really good job at any of it. It was like you're skimming the surface and running with your butt on fire. So
yeah, which is super hard, because you're very much like me. You want to do this job and you want to do it well. And when you feel like you're not excelling at your job, and you feel like you're dropping balls, when you feel like you're not providing the things that the staff need or that the inmates need, it starts to grind on you, and you start to think to yourself, like, why am I doing this? Oh my God, like I'm stressing myself out. I'm not sleeping at night because I'm thinking about what I need to do tomorrow, or I'm not, at work, I've got 85 things on the go and I'm not doing anything fully. I'm just, like I said, skimming the surface of all these tasks that need to get done. And then, yeah, just again, the opening of a new jail, a massive behemoth of a jail, and all of us working off of we think this is going to work. We think this is going to be the way it works. We think this is going to be, like this program is going to work, or that this instructor is going to work, and I mean, like, and I do say though, like as much as like a super stressful time that was, I feel like we did the best we could, and I'm sure I will get some listeners that are like, no, it was a fucking fail, Nikki, right? But I feel like once it settled out and once it evened out, a lot of the things that we saw for the jail, the potential that we saw to improve things for our staff, to improve things for the inmates, actually did play out, right? Like I feel like we did hit a lot of those marks. We missed a lot. I 100% will admit we missed a lot of marks, be it from, last minute changes, government policy, personal, like I fucking dropped the ball on that one. That's totally my fault, right? So, but I feel like the success of that jail, it is successful. It is, I mean, really, like, people can shit on it all day long, and you can say, what you want about Edmonton Remand Center and it being a fucking gong show, because it is. But I mean, how do you take that many inmates and put them in one spot, right?
Yeah.
We were basing it off of American jails, which have different inmates and different dynamics and different respect for law enforcement or not respect for law enforcement, right? So those things definitely change. I know we're running short on time, and I don't want to keep you because you got your awesome retired life to do. But I want to ask you just a couple more questions. So what do you see as like one of your greatest accomplishments, like the best thing that you did, or the best, accomplishment you've made throughout that career?
As well as all those request forms, that are kind of funny and are word salad, as we call them, or psychotic things, or whatever. I also got a lot of ones from inmates saying, thanks, you made a difference. And those little things, like I'm going to say this is kind of a strange one, but we had a guy in that had murdered his wife, and all he was worried about, like, it was in kind of a drunken fight, and they were just two people that, life was really hard for them, and he was not a bad person at all, but all he worried about was what would happen with his dog. And he worried because the dog was in the house for hours after with the police there. And he said, I just don't want to ruin another life. And so I went, oh my God, I got to find someone to take this dog. And so I, actually found a rescue group that would take him, and they sent pictures saying, give this to this guy and tell him he's a good person and everything. And I thought, that's probably crazy and weird as it is. It was like a huge win for me. And it was like, just to see humanity, I think, was part of it.
I
But
love that. Oh my God. Like my heart that I love that because that is like, again, right? We talk about inmates. We talk about, you can look at them as the biggest pieces of shit ever. And some of them are. Some of them
yeah,
are
yeah,
fucking garbage human beings and they deserve to be where they're at. And and God, I hope they rot there because they deserve to be there, right? But a lot of other ones are people that made real bad choices for whatever reason, right? Drunk, high, mentally ill,
yeah,
poor decision making, poor upbringing, no mental capacity to actually make a decision. But are they? And I said it in previous episodes. They're a good con. Like, and
yeah,
everyone looks at me like, who? What do you mean a good con? And I'm like, underneath all that shit that you're dealing with, and even if they are like a repeat offender where they just keep coming in and coming in and coming in, they still are a good, like there's something in
yeah.
them that's good, and you just have to like find that goodness and try and bring it out as you kind of send them out the door and hope that maybe a little bit of that goodness will stick with them while they go and fight their demons on the street or with their families or wherever else they're going to have to go when they get released. And yeah, the humanity of it, I love it. What was the dog's name? Do you know the dog's name?
No, but I do remember him telling me he thought that like when animal services when came and get him that they would think he was really vicious because he thought that the dog didn't like uniforms and they'd had to leave him at the Humane Society before when they couldn't afford stuff. So it was like, oh no, he's fine with us. But he said, all you have to do is say the word peanut butter and he'll do anything for you. So
Yeah,
yeah, I don't
yeah.
remember his name, but I do
Peanut butter.
remember.
His name forevermore is peanut butter.
Yeah,
Peanut
you
butter
do
the
anything
dog.
for peanut butter. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so then the opposite side of that, what was the biggest challenge moving throughout your career, or one of the biggest like obstacles you faced throughout your career?
Oh man.
I know I'm hitting you with the hard ones. I have some fun ones after this that'll be easier to answer.
I think it was like the, trying to put stuff in your head that you never wanted to have seen in the first place or that you never wanted to remember. And like that there was just so many things that you would go, oh God, please tell me I'm still going to be a human after seeing that, or I'm still going to have some compassion. Or in that mental health unit with all of the bad criminals too is, I just saw so many reports of stuff that nobody should ever
Yeah.
know about a
Mhm.
crime, or and so many things that went on in a jail as well, like the brutalness
Yeah.
sometimes of what people did to each other. And it was like I remember thinking, is that going to be the one that's going to turn me into a monster and make me not care ever?
Yeah,
It
that's fighting. Well, and like you're saying, fighting to keep that shred of humanity that you have and
Yeah,
not just let what you just read,
eat you
like,
alive.
yeah, eat you alive and make you think about it every time. And I mean, I'm sure it's the same. There's still nights where I wake up and I'm like, oh my God. And you're remembering something that happened, or you're right back there in the cell seeing what you're seeing, or and like that's going to happen forever. That is scarred in your brain, what you saw and what you've heard or what you've read. And I like that you bring that back up, because a big part of what we do is read case reports, is read, like, again, as a releasing manager, I would have to read the entire file and make sure the person I'm releasing is the right person. Well, then sometimes you have all of the documents, all of the like the disclosure, everything in there, victim impact statements that you're reading through, and you're like, it's better to just look at it and see it as an aggravated assault, docket number, blah, 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 egg assault,
Yeah,
and go, yeah, okay, this is your, versus egg assault means 5, 10 pages of a victim statement or of a police report, and like really getting the brutality of it.
yeah.
And I
And
think,
treat, and once you've seen that and going and having to work with them,
yep.
and it was like you have to put your brain somewhere else for that, like
Hmm.
just to be a decent human being to them. And
Yep.
yeah, those
And it's
were,
hard. It is
yep,
hard. It's hard.
yeah,
I've caught myself a couple times after, like you said, knowing who they are, knowing what they did, and you didn't know the day before. So you did your round and you were talking to them like, you're doing your thing. Yeah, okay, man, keep walking. And then the next day you go by and you're just like, your back is up. You can feel the hair standing up on the back of your neck as you're going past the cell, and you're like, either I want to get in there and beat the living fucking piss out of this guy because of what he did to that kid,
yeah,
or what he did to that woman, or what he did to that other person, or like, don't fucking talk to me. Like, do not even, like, don't ask for anything. You're not getting fucking nothing from me. Like, but trying not to let that come out, because that you have to be professional, and you
Yeah.
have to put your own morals and ethics aside and just be professional, whether you think it's what it should be or not. And
Yeah.
we'll get into this. We're going to be doing an episode about being a mom and being a first responder. But I remember after I used to, not that I was okay with people doing things to kids before I had kids. Obviously it's terrible, right? It's terrible.
Yeah.
But then I had my first daughter, and I remember going back to work, and it was like, I think like maybe 2 days after I came back from mat leave, and somebody came in and they'd been sexually abusing a baby. And I like lost my mind. Like I was like rage. My partner had to take me to the bathroom and be like, you're on timeout. You need to stay in the bathroom. You cannot go out on that unit and deal with that inmate, because all I could think of is that's my, like the baby, it was the same age as I just had a baby. My baby was just 3 months. I knew what that age was. I knew, and I just was like, oh, I get it now. Like I get that mama bear rage. I get that craziness. And I was like, and yeah, luckily, thankfully, I had a great partner who was like, you're on timeout, off you go.
Yeah,
And then,
exactly.
me being able to calm myself down and come back and be like, I'm not dealing with that inmate. And my partner being amazing and being like, yep, I got it. Like, and we switched units for the next until that person got transferred or moved or whatever. And thankfully, because the rage I felt instantaneously was like, wow, holy man, okay, I got to take a step back, right? So yeah, those things that pop up, and you still have to be a human, but you still have to be professional, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, now I'll get into some easy, fun ones for you. So these are going to be rapid fire questions, super quick, like a one-word answer. What was your favorite food or snack when you were on shift?
The Italian bakery donuts from Old ERC. Oh my God. Those will live with me for the rest of my life.
So for those of you that don't know, the Italian bakery in Edmonton, not the Italian Center, the Italian bakery in Edmonton makes legitimately the best chocolate covered donuts you have ever had in your entire goddamn life. They are like to die for. I remember coming in late one day, and I was like, okay, I'll grab donuts. So if you came in late, you had to bring donuts. That was just the rule. And I was like, okay, I'm really sorry. It was again, Mr. Samard, love him, God love him. And I was like, okay, I'm coming right now. And he's like, no. He's like, wait until 7:30 and then come in. And I was like, no, sir, like I can make it for 7. Like I'm coming. He's like, no. The Italian bakery doesn't open until 7:30. I don't want your shitty Tim Hortons donuts. Get me some Italian bakery. So I was allowed to be half an hour later for work just so I could get the goddamn Italian bakery donuts. But yes, oh my God, I love that you said that, because I can literally taste it right now. Like that, I know, chocolatey. Me too. Oh, so good. I'll have to swing by and try and get a couple and bring them home with me. So good, so good. Okay. What is some advice you would have for someone who's entering a career in like first responder or in corrections?
I think it's that whatever you do or whatever decision you make sure the next morning when you get up, you can look yourself in the mirror and say that was a moral thing, or that was okay, or that was a good thing, or that you can look yourself in the mirror. You don't follow some jackass that's doing something weird and crazy or giving into that rage or whatever the case may be. It's that you are able to look yourself in the mirror after whatever it is that you did.
Oh my God. Like profound. That is profound, because that's exactly it. You can get caught up in so much crap and drama and bullshit and lose why you're really there, what you're really there, and who you truly are as a human. I love that. That's amazing. That is okay. So out of all of the places that you worked, all of the things that you did, what was the coolest, or like, and I think we've answered it really with CRC, but what was the coolest location that you ever got to work in?
I think, honestly, I think it was actually at minimum security Bow River Correctional Center. And it wasn't open for very long because those were what are now conditional sentences, so people serving in the community. So, but it was a mix of really hardcore cons that did something not so bad at that moment, and also a bunch of middle class people. And because you're all there, you and your partner, they're doing everything. And sometimes it was playing ball with them out in the field, like for 4 hours on an afternoon shift. And other times it was like wrestling a drunk when that wasn't actually what people picked you for.
You're like, I guess this is my new role tonight.
Yeah. I'm always going, I'm the last person they called to that, but here I am.
But I guess I got tagged in, so here I am.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, one final one for you. What is the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on shift or on a call or on a code or
I think it was because I've been thinking about that Bow River. And so we had a female unit. We had like a whole bunch of women that had kind of stolen money out of the till or something from where they worked, and then a bunch of really hardcore ones. And we had this one woman that she had a whole baggie full of pills, if you can imagine. She kept the unit up all night. We come in, she thought someone stole her. She's high as a kite. She thought someone had stole her whole bag of pills. It turned out it was under her mattress. Yeah, and so she had them all mad and also had wrecked the kettle. It made all the women mad because she plugged it in thinking it was the curling iron. Like it was just the whole night she was a mess. So first thing in the morning, they go, thank God there's a woman. Take her down to the remand center, which was downtown at the time. And so you're driving in not a secure van, just like a regular passenger van with clear windows and everything. And it happened to be the Stampede parade morning, and the Stampede parade goes down 9th Avenue, which was where the remand center was. So we're literally following the parade. And there's thousands of people watching, and she's still really high, and she stuck a cigarette in the crack of her ass, hoping to get to smoke it later. And so she's standing up in the van with it, and she's handcuffed in the front and pulling down her pants to get at this cigarette in the crack of her ass. And so this other, my partner, I'm going, give her a fucking cigarette, like just totally mooning the entire world after the Stampede parade. It was like, oh my God.
Following behind the parade, like parents are like, oh, what's this float? Oh my God.
Yeah. And she kept going, why is this happening? Why am I going back? All this stuff. And her conclusion, this was her takeaway, is that she wrecked the fucking kettle. Yeah,
like, yes, this is why we had to drive you through the goddamn Stampede parade to the remand because you wrecked the kettle. I mean, yeah. Absolutely. Oh my God. We can't top that. We cannot top that story because that is amazing. I love it so much.
That was funny.
Oh my God. Like I said, today has been amazing. Catching up with you again has been awesome. I know you have so many more stories, so we are definitely going to have you back on because I would love to hear some more funny stuff. And it's so cool because having only ever worked at Edmonton and Red Deer, I don't know much about South. So I don't know much about Calgary and, remand and correctional and stuff like that. So hearing like that side of stuff, Stampede and we're downtown and things like that. I love it. Any last kind of words you want to give to our listeners, anything that you're thinking you want to share with us or anything like that?
Honestly, I think I would totally encourage anyone that ever wanted to do it. And I know there's people that think it was the worst thing they ever did or that it's a horrible job, but it really is. You just have to keep your soul somehow, really.
Yeah.
But I would encourage anyone that wanted to do it. I think I teach actually in the correctional studies program at Lethbridge College doing online. And so I see all these young people that want to be cops and all that stuff. And I think you go, like it's a great career,
That's me too, doing the fitness testing for them. And I'm so excited to see them, and that light and that energy and that and I remember that. I remember being 22 and having that same, I'm going to save the world. Like, this is going to be amazing. Right. And you can make a difference and you can change things and you can, make an impact. You just, like you said, you just have to keep your soul. You just have to keep that part of you that's going to keep yourself going. And sometimes you lose it. Sometimes you lose that spark, but as long as you can always find it and you can come back to who your true self is, you'll be fine in this career. I agree. Well, yeah. Barb, it has been amazing to have you online and with us and sharing your stories. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for doing this, for coming on, for chatting with me. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I hope you get out there and enjoy that beautiful sun and that retired life and that teaching life. And we will definitely, like I said, have you on again. So thank you. Thank you, Nikki.
That was fun.
Well, that's it for today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, tuning in, and sharing your time and energy with us. Make sure you check out our next episode starring another badass female first responder on Apple, Spotify, or TuneIn. And make sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Blue Line Fitness Testing. Stay safe and keep your head on a swivel.